This is the continual evolution of the East Coast beat. Older now, I sit cross legged as the sun falls on the valley. The kids and their handmade go karts ride by. As I sit, I stop, I raise my head. What will become of the restless people? How will they face their nights? Will they sit and watch TV? Will they sing to the radio? Dance? Will they take time to look at each other in their moments of silence? When I was 10, I had a friend who had a bunch of old G.I. Joe dolls, tanks, helicopters, comics. Years later, when I was 18, I was a soldier. Once, when I was a kid, I had a friend who had a bunch of Dungeons and Dragons adventure playing game books. At 20, I was dancing with a deep throated Hungarian girl in a dungeon, puffing on filterless cigarettes as though a dragon. And then there were the castles, the banners, the flags waving in the breeze, freezing cold nights with mind on fire. That's how I was when I was young and restless. At one point, when I was younger and I had no money, I had a couple friends. We used to say we were insomniacs. And we would just basically walk for miles at night. We'd leave, we lived within a couple blocks of each other's houses. So it was only like a 5 or 10 minute walk to each other's house. And then we'd tell the other one's parents that we were staying at the other one's house. And then we would just basically walk the city looking for anything, to do. And then my other friend, he had his sister's old man would take us up to the mountains, and we would go overnight camping with just a backpack and an extra jacket and some something to eat. And we would go up into the mountains, like we'd go there on a Friday night, and then we'd hike all the way from wherever they dropped us off on the road, or if we sometimes we would hike up to the mountains and back, or sometimes she would drive us, like, I don't know, maybe 10 miles away. And then we'd hike across a part of a foothill or a mountain, and then we'd get to a payphone, and he'd call her. He had done, because he used to work for roads that they would make fire trails for. So that's how he knew where all these places were. It used to be his job. So he used to just take us hiking. Oh, he knows this cool spot. He knows this cool spot. And but he was an interesting guy. He had a brother that actually made a sword. They made a makeshift forgery in their backyard, and they were trying to make swords out of old car leaf springs. And he made one, and it was very heavy. But these were the kind of kids that I grew up, because I was restless and had no money. We grew up listening to the radio, and I wasn't one to really sing or dance at the time. But at a certain age in my life, even though I remember when I first started singing, I really did not like my voice. And, but, at certain times I would just sing to the radio, same thing. When I was in the army, I wasn't really much of a singer. But, when we were in the desert, I sang to country roads. And then one time I had a partner that wanted to do karaoke, and I was 19 years old and divorced, and it was, a Sunday night, slow night, and it was just a couple people in the crowd, so I did karaoke. Sang Brown Eyed Girl. I chose the song, actually. I think it's Van Morrison, and we did did our little karaoke, and I got all excited and made a big old mess, you know. Um, but yeah, and then years later, I was doing open mics, singer songwriter open mics with a guitar, and so I got over that self consciousness. I liked my voice, but it wasn't what I would like. If I said, "Oh, I want to sound like something," that wasn't what it was. Like I don't. My voice is not what I want my voice to sound like. I always because I grew up listening to like you know, 80s rock, and so I wanted that yeah, 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 rock and roll voice. And then for a long time I had a very deep, slow, like a Leonard Cohen voice. And so and then eventually I was able to get more relaxed with that, because when I was first singing it was very just, you know, singing was tiring almost. It was like it made me feel like an old man to sing. And then but every now and then, when I jump around to Bob Marley and I'm singing to Bob Marley, I feel like I'm 17 years old, you know what I'm saying? 15-year-old kid. No trouble in the world, Mom and dad pay rent and they buy me my Levi's, and I got a new pair of shoes for school, and life is good, you know what I'm saying? So every now and then at 51, I still do the same thing. Get a little Bob Marley going, jump up and down to get up, stand up, sing along to the lyrics, start my day. Um, so I don't know what my future's going to bring, you know. But like I said in my past, I heard stories of dragons and castles, and I read, the Encyclopedia Britannica that I was at the school. I started with A, and two of the first words you're gonna run across are armor and amour, love and war, and those were some of the some of the hands that I held as I walked half blind through my life. Were the ladies of my life that offered me, love, and luckily, like I said, some people tell me. Like I've got a friend right now, and this guy was telling me, because he knew a guy that used to date her or whatever, and he's telling me, oh, she's a complete this, and she loses her mind, and she flips out, and she does this, and then after like 2 years of that, well, the guy was a complete asshole. And then this is what I told him. I said, look, you guys always tell me about how bad these girls are that you get with, and how they do this to you and they do that to you. I don't have girls that have ever done that to me. I mean, I don't, and that's what I tell them. I'm like, I really think it's what you do. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm not. If you can get a girl to flip out on you and break your phone or break your window or do all that, maybe it is legit something that you did, especially if, you can talk to a guy that can say, you know what, that never happened to me. You know what I'm saying? So, how does, that's the whole thing. But like I said, when I was 10, 13 years old, I wasn't concerned about who thought I was cool at school or who wanted to make out with me or what party I was going to. I was, playing with G.I. Joe dolls. And then when I was 18, I was fucking G.I. Joe. You know, when I was 15 years old, I was drawing dungeons, I was drawing maps of European cities, and, planning adventures where, you'd be eating roasted chicken in the Red Dragon's Inn. And, at 18, 19, 20, I was in I could go to a medieval European town, and I had money enough to do, there were no Red Dragon Inns, I don't think, but there was a Black Cock movie theater. I went to that. Um, but I mean, so in my life today, what do I do? And then what's that going to bring me tomorrow? Or is this the slow uh the slowing of the train? It's like some people's lives are like train wrecks because it's inevitable, but they just, no matter how slow or fast, they're just going to crash in the end. And some people, they get to pull the bus over, because they had the heart attack. They get to pull the bus over and save the kids before they die, instead of just crashing headlong into an oncoming car. So how does my life end? I'm 51. Like I said, I've done a couple of dumb things. I've had a couple of bad habits. I've said a couple of things in a couple of places to a couple of people. And at 51, I'm still trucking. You know what I'm saying? I still keep going. But at the same time, like I said, I think that is it is it is it in human nature to be bad and evil? Yes, it really is. It wouldn't. I think is every man capable of doing horrible things? Probably. You know what I'm saying? Some people just let it go. You know what I'm saying? And that's the thing. So those of us that choose to withhold that aggression and violence and all that bad behavior, um, we're holding it back because we know that that kind of behavior is not needed. That's why you see a lot of guys on the bus don't do shit. You know what I'm saying? Because they're just holding everything in. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's why superhero movies are so popular because kids keep thinking, why don't anybody do anything? I don't know. Why doesn't anybody do anything? Maybe because by the time you get old enough to stop doing things, you've had a couple things happen in your life where you're like, no, you know what? Maybe I don't know who the good or bad guy is in that situation. You see two people arguing on a bus, you want to say something. Who's right? Who's wrong? Oh, I can tell. Can you? You see this going on. If you don't know what's happening. Like I said, if I give a man $1, he says that's not enough to get something to eat. So I give him $10. So he goes and he gets $10 worth of fucking fentanyl. He's not eating. And he took $9 extra off of me because I figured, oh, well, that's right. If he needs to go to Burger King, if he's waiting outside of a Burger King, can you give me something to eat? And I give him $10, he can go get something to eat. Right? That's how you're thinking. He's right outside of a Burger King. Why would he be asking me if he wasn't hungry? You know? Same thing, like I said. I don't know who's right and who's wrong. I see girls breaking guys' car windows. I don't know what the girl or the guy did. I try not to judge. I try not to laugh, but I try not to judge. But sometimes some of them just lose their mind. It's like, okay, he may have wronged you, but if you're really, really losing your mind to that point where you're going to just flip out and start smashing shit, thank you for just doing it to him and not coming across the street and fucking with me, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, um, you know, maybe you need to bring some of that extra energy in. Like I said, soldiers understand flags waving in the breeze, but we also understand peace. And that's what I've come to notice about a lot of people is I don't think they understand peace. I don't think they understand what it means to calm. I think they just go from one horrible, you know, insult to one flagrant violation to one, that guy just said this to me. That girl just did that to me. These people didn't put enough napkins in my order with my cheeseburger. This girl, that's not a full fucking coffee, you know what I'm saying? I mean, some people that's just how they get because they don't realize, you know, and they don't realize that it's your life. There's 8 billion of us, and I don't know if we could actually live together. you know. But some of us try, some of us try harder. And, some of us get burnt out. And that's, what I think what we consider truly evil and it scares us is because even during our worst days, there's a line that most people, they're going to stand up and do something. They won't let that happen. Um, and I think what scares people the most is when they meet people that have crossed that line and are actually trying to pull them across too, you know, and to actually cause harm to other people for no reason other than it happened to me, or we're wolves, run with the wolves. Well, you know what, I understand that concept. Nobody wants to be weak, and I'm getting older, and I definitely don't want to be preyed upon. But even as a soldier, I still never considered myself a wolf among sheep. You know what I'm saying? Even as a soldier, even though I was in Charlie 610 Wolf Pack, that was my hunt was a completely different hunt. It wasn't going downtown and hanging out front of a 7-Eleven and fighting people for dollar bills or buying them, making them buy me alcohol, or you know what I'm saying. So, like I said, in this world, you know, certain people at a certain age, you kind of have, here come the motorcycles. At a certain age, you kind of have an idea of where you're going, and you should follow that idea. But like I said, if you find yourself continually making mistakes, you should try to correct those mistakes. Even if it takes 30, 40 years, what have you got in your life but time to perfect yourself? Oh, perfection's not possible. Have you tried? I mean, it's not possible. You know what I'm saying? I don't have the perfect body. I don't have the perfect face. I don't have the perfect outfits. I don't live in the perfect house. I don't, my grasp of, other language is not perfect. And, I don't have the perfect income, of course. But can I perfect myself? Can I take what I found when I was born, and I found myself, and I could identify. I was pulled from the cosmic unconsciousness, and I identify myself with the self. Could I perfect that self? What did I used to do that was a learned behavior? It was a reaction to the environment, but if it hurt me and I continue to do it and it continues to hurt me, something that happened 20, 40 years ago is still hurting my life today. Can I let that go? Can I get better with my friends? Can I get better with my family? By the time my mom dies, will she understand, hey, you know what I'm saying? I may say it sucks sometimes, and, I never had kids of my own. So if anybody wants to, ask, how is life worth it? I don't know, man. It's kind of like it's like watching a very good movie when you're having a very bad day. Sometimes you get into the movie, sometimes you can't. You know what I'm saying? But has it been beautiful? Yes. Has it been majestic? Yes. Has it been otherworldly? Yes. And has it been everyday slow, painful, and plain? Doing what today, doing what today, doing what today, for how many days in a row until I do what? Besides what I do every day. But that's the whole thing. At one point, I was traveling wide circles around the world. I drive 50 miles in a day, every day. Now I sit in one spot, and the world moves around me. If I go to the corner market, there's a chance that I meet somebody I know. There's a chance that I see a pretty girl. There's a chance that, who knows what could happen. And all I have to do now is just walk less than half a mile to the corner market. Whereas before I used to have to drive 50 miles a day just to sleep at night. Now I go to the corner market, get a pack of smokes, come back home, drink some coffee, smoke some herbs, listen to some music, you know, because like I said, sometimes it's what you don't do, and it's why you don't do it. I know people that do certain things and act certain ways, and it's not what I want. It's not what I want for my life. And luckily, I can choose not to live that way. Some things maybe I can't choose, you know what I'm saying? Like how easy is it to quit smoking? How easy is it to quit? After 30 years of cigarettes and tobacco, could I give it up? I don't know. What would I do if I didn't have that to do with my life? You know what I'm saying? But then at the same time, when I was a certain age and people were getting into this and getting into that, and oh, if you hang out with us, this is what we do. It just didn't, there was no appeal to me. You know what I'm saying? There was no draw to anybody's little club that I wanted a part of. And at 51, it's the same thing. Not to be mean, but I'm 51 and uninterested most of the time. I mean, like I said, if I see, I like clean kids, and I like parents that do nice things for their families, and like I like the idea of the American dream, that you would have more than enough to where your kids would be clean and you could go to the downtown square on market night and you could eat, corn on the cob or a peach cobbler, and you had a couple of extra dollars for stuff like that. That was the American dream. I lived the American dream when I was, U.S. Army, in the U.S. Army. That was as close to it as I've ever known. I had my own place. I had my own cash. I had my own friends. It was great, so I had plenty. Now on disability, like I said, I have a place. I have enough money to eat every day. I have money. I mean, if I was, I wouldn't. But no, you can't raise kids on this. I don't even see how how my neighbors do it. It's like I barely keep myself in shoes and socks. I couldn't see keeping a family, but that's the American dream, you know what I'm saying? And that's why they call it a dream. So the continual evolution of the East Coast beat, yes, you know, as I am older, I can sit cross legged, and when I raise my head, I have a lifetime of memories behind me. They say that we could remember every step we've ever taken. I could be sitting in a chair with the window open back in Budapest listening to techno music, by the river, drinking Red Bull and vodka with my friend. You know what I'm saying? That I could I could just slip back into that every night. I don't need TV. I don't need all that. But how, as a restless person, do I face the night? Caffeine, nicotine, and, herb, music, and every now and then somebody will stop by and spend 15, 20 minutes with me. And when the daylight comes, I push myself off my sleeping mat. I, take a shower, put on some clean clothes, head out the door, and I try to understand that, like John Cougar Mellencamp said, life goes on long after the thrill of living is dead. But there are still things I enjoy, you know what I'm saying? So, am I still living? I don't know. you know. But am I still evolving? I hope so. The continual evolution of the East Coast beat, we will not be denied.